So hello and welcome to Vanessa Loves, where we have conversations about what really matters, where we feel deeply connected to self, others and the planet. And I am so excited today because I have the beautiful Vanessa Loves, Louise Eccles-Cookson. How are you today, Louise?
Hi, Vanessa.
Oh,
yeah, good. Very
you're
good. Thank you.
Oh,
Lovely
you look.
sunny day. Yeah,
I was going to say, you
well,
look sunny today. You look as blooming as your flowers behind you.
Yes, these are from my best friend. She knew I was having a bad day, so she sent me
Oh,
flowers. The best bit, she lives in California, so I
oh
know
wow.
I know she'll have had to do some arranging, because it's usually me that she wants to send flowers to people. She gets me to do it for her. So
Oh,
yeah,
gorgeous.
so
What a beautiful friend. How blessed you
yeah,
are.
she
And
is.
talking
I
about,
am
yeah,
very much.
talking about friends though, it was
Mhm.
it was our mutual friend, the crazy Neil Giller, that put us in
Yes.
touch with one another and said, I
All
know
his
someone
fault.
you've got to have, yeah, it's all his fault. You've got to have a conversation with. And
Yeah.
he was so right, because one of the things I said to you right at the beginning of our conversation before we recorded was that I have total admiration for you, your message and what you're sharing in the world, but also a massive appreciation for what you're sharing in the world and about communication, and it's good to talk. And I was welling up watching your video on LinkedIn, which I would recommend anybody to go and watch to get a gist of how passionate you are about what really matters. So is it fair to say that what really matters to you, Louise, is it's good to talk?
Yeah.
And
Thank you for
why?
that.
Yeah, why is that? Please do share with
Um,
us why.
yeah, absolutely. I wholeheartedly believe in the it's good to talk. It's actually, I need to give full credit to my husband for coming up with suggesting that as my sort of line and how to end it.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't come up with something quite so succinct, but it sums everything up. And I think the reason why it's so passionate about it is because it's actually when I started talking to others and started listening to their stories and sharing my own, that it realized how much of a difference it's made. And I talk about how I heard a great presenter. He's called Akhil. Akhil, he was at the time the national director for the Netherlands, and he presented at our national conference. And he shared the story, and they do a lot, and for some reason that particular year had been changed. It was very much, the first day was all about us as directors. Now usually when we go to the conference, it's all there about B&I skills, how you can do this, how you can help your chapter with that, how you can grow, blah blah blah. The very first day was all about helping us as directors.
Wow.
And so they had different speakers, and Akhil came up and shared this amazing story, and how he had lost everything. It was completely inspirational, and it was an amazing presentation, and that stuck with me all weekend. And at the second day, they had Terry Hamill's an amazing B&I director, and he did this dream room at the end. Now I'm a big softie when it comes to music anyway, and I can blub when at the sound of the music. I'm like blubbing.
Yeah.
Kids just look at me now and go, "Are you crying again?"
Oh, that's me too. Yeah.
Constantly. So I watched the big concert they did with all, like 8 hours of it on Amazon. I think I cried through most of it. But he talked about and set these challenges for us and says, where do you see yourself in a year, 2 years, 3 years? And says, right, while you're thinking about it, he's doing all this dancing and bouncing about on the stage. I'm going to play some music. I've always wanted to be a DJ, and put some music on. And it was quite lively music. And that was it. I was gone.
Wow.
I was like 45 minutes. I just couldn't stop. My area director turned around to me and went, I knew you'd be crying. But it was so much more than that. It was like a release. I was like, I have to do something.
Yeah.
And at that point, I said to myself, I cannot come back to the conference next year feeling how I feel right now.
Do you know,
I have to make a change. This is a third year I felt like this. I've got to do something.
Yeah, but that speaks massively about divine timing, as I call it. Right place, right time, right energy, right connection.
Yeah.
And we can all feel inspired a lot if we're open to it. But what is that different type of inspiration where, and I, as you were speaking, I think of inspiration obviously as in spirit, is I'm connected to myself. What was it? Can you remember a feeling at all that that made you go, that's it, enough's enough? Because it must have with the tears, because I believe tears are the truth.
Yeah.
When the tears come up and you are connected to yourself in that moment, what a beautiful feeling for you then to be able to go, right, that I'm going to go that way. I'm going to make a change. And it's so to feel truly inspired.
It was just the whole sort of surrounding. I think, you know, I've had sort of people talk to me, but I never saw myself as being depressed. It was just at that moment when I sort of went, it was a list of questions, because it wasn't just sort of where do I want to be in our business, it was also life activities, and I was filling it in, and it was almost like a dawning realization of sort of facts of the fact that no, of course I'm overweight, I'm shoving my face full of cakes all the time, of course this isn't right, I'm not doing that, I'm dwelling on all these things. And it was, as I answered each question, it was literally like a sort of a light bulb moment, each one of, it's my fault I'm doing that, or I'm not doing it. It was like, I'm overweight, I'm depressed, I you know, I've got a stupid amount of debt that I need to do, and I hate my business,
right?
And I was lonely, and that's because I wasn't doing anything. And I said, you know, and that was a choice that I'd made indirectly, and it was because my best friend Kat sent me the flowers. She actually paid for me to go over and visit her. And I felt so bad that she'd paid for me because I couldn't afford to do it. And I didn't feel that I could go out and spend money and go out and drinks and things like that, because that would be like, well, I can go out and afford to go out, have a good time and have a bit of a laugh, but I can't afford to go out and visit her. And I was punishing myself without realizing. And so I made a lot of choices. I made a lot of choice differences. Biggest one was I needed to get out of debt, big time, and I needed to start getting out there and doing stuff.
But is it fair to say though, because you took the words right out of my mouth when you said realization, because that was the word that was coming to me as you were speaking, and then I've just written down admission and awareness, because is it fair though to say that you didn't know you were depressed, so therefore you didn't know what to do, so that once the unconscious becomes conscious, once it comes from the dark into the light, you go, oh my God, there we go. That's what that is. Right, now I know that. I can make a choice. I can decide to do this. I'll let go of that. So just to paraphrase what you say, I can stop eating cake, and I can do, and all the rest of it. But if we don't know those patterns that we're stuck in, if we don't even know how we feel, if we are, because I don't know, I numbed myself. Mine was eating, perfectionism, and codependency. They would be the way I would completely numb myself out to avoid feeling anything uncomfortable. And I tend to find that, do you think maybe it's fair then to say that people stay stuck either in a depressive state or anxious or in that vicious circle because they're unaware? They don't have those realizations, so they might feel frustrated, but they don't know why, and they don't go to that place. So you just happen to be in the right place with the right time, with the right questions, and at that time ready for you to be able to do something about it. So it's the realization is massive. The awareness is key, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I wasn't aware, and it's only now when I look back at it that I realized that I was depressed. Because for me it had just become normal. You know, I was stuck in this situation. It was the product of all my own doing. You know, my marriage had broken down. I'd made the decision to end it. It was basically, I'd made my bed. I was having to lie in it, and that was my mindset. And my parents got divorced when I was younger, and I'd set myself certain standards. And I thought, and I wanted to be happy. My mum was divorced and on her own at 40, and I'm like, I don't want to be that. And I was. So instantly failure, because that sort of that was a sort of like a thing for me. I did not want to be on my own at 40. And I don't know why. It doesn't even make any sense, but that, you know, now when I say it back, but that sort of it was sort of something that I was sort of really judging myself against, but it was me judging me, not anybody else. And that was a key thing. I read The Happiness Advantage. I'm still reading The Happiness Advantage. And one of the things that he talks about in that is this perception that we need to be successful to be happy, but it's actually the other way around. We need to be happy to be successful. And that took quite a bit of time for me to register. And it was only when I stopped judging myself and I started to love myself that and be happy with where I was and who I was, that things started improving. I mean, I could write a book on the bad dates I went on, and there are some some extremely interesting ones. Possibly shouldn't mention them on this. But in reality, that's what I was attracting, because that's what I was myself. I was a car crash, you know, because that's what I was coming across. I just sort of radiated drama and you know, without realizing it.
Perpetuating it. And that, I think, again, that's the whole point. And when we don't realize it and we just look at our lives and we go, really, again? The drama, all the rest of it. And it's not until we look at that and, like you say, recognize and realize that actually I am the car crash, to use your words. I love that, because I felt exactly the same way. And it was like, okay, so if this is what I'm complaining about, if this is what I'm blaming, if this is what I'm just like, what on earth is all this going on? How am I going to change that? Well, I've got to change this first. And it's that realization. But then it's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. And it was that connection that you felt clearly really inspired you to make some choices. Now, those choices, I'm guessing, weren't always easy. I'm guessing that, you know, they might have been clear, but they're not always easy. And it's that programming, isn't it, that we are so caught up in, and so few people decide to make that change. They don't, as Michael Jackson used to sing about, look in the mirror and decide to make that change. We don't see it as being us, do we? We're like, oh, well, I'm like this because of you, or that, or this situation, or I'm late to work because of the tractors, you know? We're so used to being caught up in that blame victim place.
It's a blame society, and it's natural. And I think I wrote a number of books on sort of prep that have really sort of made a significant difference on how I look at things. One of the first ones that I sort of read that really made a difference was one called Extreme Ownership.
Wow.
And because I started to read sort of they gave us BNIU, and I thought, I can't actually get my members to listen to it and do it if I don't do it myself. So I started doing some, and then I started listening to more Audible books, and I had an Audible subscription already, but was just using it to listen to novels. I had this big idea that I will use it to listen to lots of self-development books and then just listen to the late Stephen King book. But I started actually listening to it, and I listened to this one called Extreme Ownership, and I've driven my members bonkers with this, and my husband, and anyone that will listen to me. But it for me, it was that ownership, owning the decisions, and that the book stops with you, and then being able to learn it. Now, owning it and admitting it doesn't make it right, but it gives you the opportunity to correct something. So if something's gone wrong, I look at what could I have done. So instead of going, well, that's their fault because they did this, well, actually, what could I have done to have changed how they did something and how they reacted? And actually, it's thinking of it like that. So if I've made a mistake, or I think one of the first sort of business applications of it I used was when I did some training in a chapter, and it all got changed at the very last minute, and so they didn't get training. And but the following day they wanted training points, and it's like, well, you didn't do training, so you're not getting training points.
Right.
And it was like, well, you changed it, so you should know. And it was like, and then when I thought about it, I thought, actually, no, you changed it. I should have told you that would, the implication of that would mean you don't get training points.
Brilliant. Yeah, so taking
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just
yeah,
taking ownership. It's not going to change my decision. You're still not getting training points,
yeah,
but
yeah,
you're
yeah.
absolutely right. So next time, I know that I will make sure that next time anything like that happens, I'll make sure they're made aware of it. And I think that for me was, say, that's a very, very basic sort of application of it, but
it's brilliant though, because the word that's screaming at me as you're talking is integrity, right? So, and when you talk about extreme ownership, and rather than blaming and pointing, it takes back the power. I don't mean power as in control, and as in if I've got the power you don't, but what I mean is that if when we take ownership and we are in our integrity, i.e. we are congruent with our energy, heart, feeling and actions, that
I know you like
integrity
that
is
word.
connection. Yeah, oh, congruent.
Yeah, I remember you saying you like that word.
I know, yeah.
I know.
It resonates with me, that word. You know, when things are, you know, it's coherent and congruent, it's together, it's harmony. And yeah, so by taking back the power, not that I have power over you by taking back the power, it's I'm connected. The energy that is flowing through me, I'm using to serve myself, you, us, the situation, and then beyond. Absolutely. And then of course the other thing about that is the word that's coming up is real. When you're in that place, I think there's a certain amount of respect then that people have for you, for explaining, correcting, if you like, being able to articulate and communicate yourself so that everybody knew where they stood. And that was, I know that's again the other thing I got from your talk, and hearing you again in February was just brilliant. I was so blown away by it, because, and I can see you've got the Brené Brown quote behind you there.
I love this.
Oh, the arena one.
This, yeah, I use this in my latest sort of presentation that I did with that, because Greg asked me to do his green room again, another sort of event, and I did the very first version of my It's Good to Talk there, so I thought I can't talk about the same thing, so completely panicked. And then at that particular point, we lost Caroline Flack. Now, I didn't particularly know who she was, other than that she won Strictly at one point. I think she was on Strictly. But what was going around a lot was be kind. If we can be anything, be kind. And she talks about very much about not being a critic. And this particular speech, the Man in the Arena speech, the Teddy Roosevelt speech, just resonates hugely with me. And for me, it's like I've got this notebook, find it, and I love it. And she says destroying a desk as she does it. But says if you're not in the arena, also getting your ass kicked, I'm not interested in your feedback.
I need a book like that.
Yeah,
wow.
And it was
That's
like,
amazing.
do you know what? And that's what it is. A lot of people are really happy to give their opinion. They're really happy to tell you what you should or shouldn't do, but they're not happy to get their hands dirty. And as far as I'm concerned, unless you are literally in there with me, then I'm not interested. Well, you can tell me how you think I should do it, but unless you're willing to get there in there with me and prove me wrong that way, then I'm not interested. Get your hands dirty. And
absolutely. It's the compassion and the empathy that comes from being in the arena. It's the connection when you speak about being in your own arena in an open, honest way, that somebody goes, oh, do you know what, me too. It's that. And the other, I love the quote, and I can't remember who said it. It was shared with me years ago, and I love it. You cannot teach what you do not know, and you cannot lead where you do not go. So what you're saying is that person that's saying, yeah, you should do this, that, and the other, if you are not walking that path with me, next to me, as my friend, open-heartedly, thanks, but no thanks. And it's almost like there is no connection here. And if there's no connection, there's no connection. So it's very much like I'm just going to concentrate on myself. And I think this is where, in my experience, I know I've tripped myself up, but I wonder if other people trip themselves up. Whereas they go, oh yeah, that's a good point, and they don't recognize, and they try it on and it doesn't fit, and then they still keep wearing it and they still keep doing it. Whereas we're not taught at school, as far as I'm concerned, we're not really taught by parents. I've got two beautiful parents and they're wonderful people, but nobody takes you to one side as part of our education, as part of our imparting information as we grow up, and sits with you and teaches you how to listen to yourself, how to trust yourself, and how to act from your heart, to how to follow your heart. And we've got all this information coming at us the whole time, and we're bombarded. And of course, how can you communicate? And we were talking about this before we came on air. How can you communicate if you don't actually know what it is you feel?
Yeah,
You can't articulate. There's nothing to say, is there?
I know, and it's
feelings are difficult to talk about anyway because they don't have language.
And I think that's where it's good to actually talk to somebody and try and get things out, to understand why you're going in those directions.
Yeah.
We talked about briefly how we had a family meeting over the weekend, because there's 4 of us in the house all feeling lockdown, and we're all feeling different things, you know. And my mum is currently in hospital on her own, and it's horrible, and it's really sort of stressing me out. She's absolutely amazing with how she's sort of fighting this, and the very first time that she's really felt this bad with it, and that's really sort of bothering me, and you know, it's making me more tense than normal. My eldest daughter, Charlotte, she is away from her boyfriend. She's not seen him for months. She doesn't know when they can get, because he's in Leicester, she's in Stockport. Wow. But also she's had to come straight from university. I went and picked her up, and she's had her own place. She's had her own space. She can do what she wants. And now she's back living in a house where it's like, oh my God, could you leave any more mess in the kitchen? You clean up after yourself, and you pick the towels up off the bathroom floor, you know. And she's suddenly having to adapt to being in a house again. And she's been a student for 3 years at uni on her own. My husband can't see his daughters properly because they're at their mums. So whilst he can walk down the road and sort of talk to them, he can't give them a hug.
And all these stories are at play, aren't they? All of these stories are all living and are all present and occurring in one place, your home.
Absolutely.
Home.
Yeah.
And we just don't, when we don't understand what's going on, but it's powerful when you can
it just sort of explodes. And then add a teenager into the mix who's got all teenage emotions and doesn't understand why she feels the way she feels at times. It creates a huge atmosphere. And I saw a post, and Alistair, one of my members, brilliant, we have a good chat. I think he posted on my post today, he's free for Mickey taking and insults at any time. But he put a quote up last week that I thought was brilliant, and he's absolutely bang on. We're not all in the same boat, but we are in the same storm. So we're all affected by lockdown. We're all affected by this at the moment, and it's massively affecting our mental health, whether we realize it or not, and all in different ways. I can't ever say to you that I know how you feel. I had this discussion with a member this morning. I can't say to you I know how you feel. I can understand why you might be feeling things, but I can't tell you how you feel. My circumstances are different to your circumstances. So you can't know how I feel.
Well, and also your feeling of frightened might be different to somebody else's feeling of frightened. And so if we can't communicate how we feel, if we don't know how we feel, for whatever reason, we don't want to go there, we're too caught up in our own story and our own busy lives, or addiction, or whatever it might be, and our mental health is not allowing us to really get to know ourselves. If we don't know what we feel and we can't communicate, do you think it's fair to say that maybe by sharing stories and just having conversations, it doesn't have to be perfect, as I always say it, when I've either talked to clients or the kids as well, particularly when they're trying to share how they feel. I said, don't worry about it making sense. Don't worry about it coming out clumsy. Just make a sound. Just make a sound. Even if it is just the odd word, just here. We'll work it out, but start somewhere. And if it's, so by sharing your story, what's going on for you, that's surely got to be a first step, hasn't it? In just
Yeah, I'd say so. I think sort of what you were saying there, I would see it from the opposite side, only insofar as it's actually because somebody else shared, I started understanding how I felt. So I think the
Yes.
fact that people do share, and this is where, if you feel strong enough to share, if you are able to share, absolutely do it, because those people who don't know how they feel,
Yeah.
who don't understand that there's actually something not quite right, that
Yeah.
there is a way out of things, because they don't even realize that they're in something to get out of, they're
Yeah.
in that rut.
Yeah.
It can be hearing somebody else's story that makes the difference.
Massively
And
so.
that's why I sort of wanted to share my story, because it was when I did it the first time and I only shared a basic version of it, I got a reaction from somebody, and I hadn't aimed for that reaction. I just hoped they really liked it.
Yeah.
And I was more worried about, does anyone actually want to hear what I've got to say? They want to
Yeah.
hear about my story. And I'm like,
Yeah.
who's going to be interested in my story?
Yeah.
And it was what Greg said to me afterwards. He said, you know, and I talked about Akhil, and he said, wouldn't you want to know if you'd had that impact on somebody?
Yes.
And I thought, yeah, I would. So I wrote to Akhil and I told him how I'd felt and what the impact of his presentation had on me. And we actually ended up having a one-to-one in a Starbucks in Bangkok.
Wow.
Randomly.
So
And it was,
exotic. Yeah.
I know, and it was brilliant. But it was, and so I wanted to continue to share my story, because I thought it was Akhil sharing his. It was Terry's presentation that tipped me over the edge, but it was actually when I re-listened to his presentation, it was realizing that I listened to his and I listened to Terry's, and that was when I realized it was actually Akhil's story, because I recognized so many things that I was now doing unconsciously.
Yes.
That he was talking about, and I'm like, God, I do that. I have that.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh yeah, that makes sense now. And I absorbed more than I thought I had.
Yeah, and it's making sense of it, as you just said there, because only when people share their stories, and I've said many times to myself before and to others, is the truth is undeniable. So that when Akhil shared his story, there was something that resonated with you. Now, it might not have resonated with Joe Blogg sat next to you, but you heard something from what he said. So it's not necessarily what he said, but it's how it landed with you. This is my perception, because this is my experience, that you listen to that, because the truth is undeniable. You can't ignore that. And that's whenever I do any presentation at all, I say to my guests or whatever, it's not the words I'm saying. Please listen to what it's saying to you. Don't listen necessarily to me, but listen to what you are feeling as a result of what you hear today.
Yeah.
And it's just helping people understand that that's the voice that is triggered or inspired, and it's beginning to listen to that, isn't it? And again, so if you don't know what you're feeling, listen to other people, and then listen to what that is. And by sharing, and you said it a few times at really poignant times in your talk, is that, you know, it's okay that you feel alone. It's okay that you're not okay. And I think the relief of that, which is actually one of the reasons why I wanted to share that quote with you from Marianne Williamson, and she talks about the fact that our deepest fear is that we are inadequate. We feel that we're inadequate, whereas our deepest fear is actually that we're more powerful beyond measure. And she talks about the fact that by shrinking yourself and keeping yourself small in a depressed and anxious state and fearful state doesn't serve the world. When you recognize your brightness, when you recognize your light, and I'm paraphrasing the quote because it's quite a long one, when you connect to self and you show up in all your glory, and I mean by that in your integrity, your honesty, your, you know, and values and etc., it's almost like you illuminate the way for others. She talks about you automatically liberate others from their own fear because you've made it okay, and
giving people permission.
that's exactly it. You know, for you to say, I felt this and this, that and the other, and that resonates with somebody, they go, oh my God, she gets it. I'm just going to go up to her and say, thanks, Louise. That really made so much sense. I that because I feel this and this happened to me. And the conversation begins. And then, you know.
And I think that sums it up brilliantly. It's like when people don't know how they feel, or they're not aware of how they are, it can be hearing somebody, it can be reading a quote, it can be say hearing someone sharing their story, a presentation, something you read in a book that all of a sudden just makes total sense.
Yeah.
And you start, that's how I feel, and then suddenly you can start putting words onto it.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was when, you know, when Greg said to that, don't you want to know people, if you know, that don't you want Akhil to know that it, or you know, if people that you've actually opened up and you've helped somebody, it's like, you know what, that would be great if my story can help just one person drag themselves out of it, then it's completely worth me sharing my story. Because I was asked that, do you think people want to know our stories, is it worth sharing them? And I think absolutely, because wouldn't you want to know? So if just sharing it just help that one person. And it was, you know, and it was great. I had a conversation with somebody after I spoke at Members Day. A director contacted me and said that they'd got a member that was really struggling, and you know, that they were thinking of stepping away and leaving everything, and after listening to my presentation decided to stay. And I got a message yesterday that they'd actually renewed, so they're still in. And I just thought, you know what, that's great, I've made a difference to somebody. And it's from sharing my story. And it's like, some people would be like, oh god, she's off again. And it's like, you know what, it's not for you, it's for those people that need somebody, that don't know where to look, they don't know what to ask for. And if that's the people that I'm trying to reach. So I wore my strong female lead t-shirt, and I've got this because that's what I want to be. You know, I've got the option of doing this, and I, you know, it's like, what motivates me? And everyone goes, oh, my kids, you know, blah blah blah. And it's like, it is my kids, but I want to be a good role model for them. I want to show them that it's okay to not be okay, that we do have these feelings, and it's okay, and we need to talk about it. And if I can help them not be closed like I was, and frightened to talk to people, then, you know, I've done a good job. And I got so many hang-ups, and I was my biggest critic. And that is also, you know, that sort of goes on from this, is like, don't be a critic. And often we are our biggest critic. We are, you know, we put stupid standards on ourselves. We get angry that we've not achieved this and not achieved that. And it's like, what does it matter?
Absolutely.
Compared the only person it's bothering is you.
And
are you happy?
It's interesting, because that quote, as you were talking about it earlier, what was coming up for me is absolutely, once you've heard somebody and you're in the arena, if you like, and you've got that connection, it's, even though it's not about fixing anything or anyone, because I don't believe we're broken. I think it's just a feeling that we have that is a disconnect, which is the break. But once you're in that place with somebody and you're in the arena with them, I don't believe there are answers or solutions necessarily that will solve all. But I think what we long for most, and this is my personal experience, especially at the moment, is I don't want anybody to give me a solution. I just want you to be there with me. I want you to hold my hand. I want you to, you know, connect with me, and I mean that from like a, you know, in a heart-centered place, and just walk with me. Because that for me is where I believe then the solutions will come, at least for that moment, and then that keeps changing. And it's like, what do you need? You know, how can we be kind? I always remember Wayne Dyer when he said he used to fight with his wife, or they used to have little arguments and stuff, and he used to say, we might not see eye to eye, but how can we be kind? And then how can you resist that, really? How can you resist that? You can't, can you? And I think compassion and kindness, and I've got 3 main values in my life of love, fun and kindness, and when they're not present, I know about it, I feel awfully disconnected with myself. So because I know that BNI is such a massive part of your life, and one of the main reasons is that it serves what seems like your purpose in the world, which is communication, connection. So how would you go about building effective, fulfilling, beautiful relationships with people? Because at the moment, isn't it fair to say that I think we're all getting the sense of, and that's why I love that quote, we're not in the same boat, we're in the same storm. We are all one, and that's why your pain is my pain, your joy is my joy. And if we are that connected, the disconnect and the discord is what's causing people's fears and stories to come out and project on everybody else. So what are some of the ways that you feel that would be good for people to be aware of to help really either build or rebuild, let's face it, because there's a lot of rebuilding that needs to go on as well, relationships, so they're fulfilling?
I think is forgetting the process and the policies element of things. I think is a very much important to me, is people before process. BNI is very much full of policies, procedures and structures, and it's great, and that's why it works. But it's about making sure that we actually put the person first and understand where they're coming from and why they are like that. And I think, you know, it's dead easy to say, have lots of one-to-ones, get to know people, but I think it's literally coffee and a chat. And that's what I've been trying to do with members. It's like, have a coffee and a chat and just get to know me. And you know, some people want to have a proper one-to-one and sit there, and will sit there with their little sheet out and go, right, I want this, and business advice. And other people, I've sat back, and before I realised it, it's an hour and all we've done is gab.
And but that's what it's about,
me,
isn't it? That's the real bit.
And it's about actually getting to know people. We become members of BNI in order to create and grow our businesses. And it's a great business network. And it was what my friend Kate, who's a member and has become a great friend, and she came up with this quote, and I pinched it off her. It's mine now, Kate, sorry. And that was, BNI is not just a great business network, it's also a great support network. Because we literally do have people around us who have experienced certain things, similar things, and are in the same circumstances. And when we look at it for that benefit and see it for that, things open up for us a lot more. So I remember doing a training session, and I had a member stay behind at the end and go, I'm relatively new in business, and I'm really struggling to get paid by some clients. Has anyone got experience in this? And about 5 or 6 members are like, try this, try that, try the other, this person's great for that. They weren't all just straight on with, oh, you need to have a referral, and this is what this cost, come and see me and I'll charge you this. It was everyone was willing to just help them, and just give them a little bit of advice and a little bit of guidance, because they'd been in the same boat. And when people see BNI for that benefit, as well as growing your business, I think you can achieve massive things. And that is when you do create great friendships, because we're in that same storm.
Absolutely.
Different boats, same storm. And irrelevant of lockdown, we're like that when we're running our own businesses. And we need when we are actually getting to know people properly, we can open up and we can talk to people.
Absolutely. And you find you've got things in
that
common.
element of it.
Well, and also because at the core essentially of any business is the person, regardless of what you're selling, a service or a widget or whatever. And I love that people before process, because that is so powerful. One of my mentors is a beautiful woman. She's no longer with us, Mary Kay Ash in America. And she had a very hugely successful multi-million billion-dollar company in helping people enhance the way they looked. And she always said P&L was not profit and loss, it was people and love. And that was always her guiding star.
Absolutely.
People first. And it's, I think that can get lost, not all the time, but I think it's how do we remind people that is the center of everything. And you spoke about this, I can't remember if it was on air or before, about success and happiness. It's not your success to be happy, it's your happy and success. Happiness is the way. And it's
it was Happiness Advantage. I have the book.
That's it.
Sean Ecker, because I sort of read this, and he literally says that people think they need to be successful to be happy. And it's not. It's the other way around. You need to be happy to be successful. And I think I've proved that to myself many times. And when I look back at all the different chances that I've had and the different sort of opportunities, they've come about when I was already happy.
Yes. And equally,
when I made that decision to just accept who I was,
yeah,
that's when it happened.
that's when it happens. And equally, go back to a place where you are in your successful place, whether that is, you know, in business or whatever your definition of success is, and you take away business, money, all the rest of it. If you don't have your relationships, you ain't got nothing. You
No,
just
you can have all exactly. Sorry, talking over you. All
no,
the money
not
in
at
the
all.
world,
Yeah.
all the money in the world, biggest cars, great, amazing business. But if you're on your own and you've not got anyone to share it with, or you've not got, and you know, you don't have friends around you, then it's
and it's the connection to self that's so important first, isn't it? And you've touched on that. When I accepted myself, when I learned to love myself, only then did I recognize my value and my worth, but also then was I able to connect and love others. And I think that's a big thing that a lot of people miss, is that they find their connection through another, i.e. codependency, rather than it being from here and being able to express it that way over, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
I think
yeah.
Yes, I had a thought process in my head for many times. The wrong sort of one was, I need to be in a relationship. I had this thing in my head that I was a failure if I was single at 40, because of and that was a huge sort of a weight that I'd put on myself.
Yeah.
And nobody else thought that. Nobody else judged me for that. It was something that I'd put on me, and I thought, you know what, I don't need to be in a relationship. I would just like to be in a relationship.
Yeah,
and I think
share your life with somebody. Yeah.
And Mark says that's why he ended up being attracted to me, was because it was it was the determination, it was the striving to be successful, to help people, that did that. I mean, I'm sure that's also why I drive him completely insane. But it was what drew him towards me, and now drives him completely nuts.
Yeah, that's what he loves about you. Yeah, love that.
I never, and I love being married again, but I didn't feel I needed to be.
No.
And I didn't, I don't feel defined by it. And I think that's an important sort of point. And I felt too long that was that's what defined success, being married with kids, and that was what was defining success. And it's just working out your values, and it's not. No. I am happy, I'm successful, and I'm in a happy marriage, and it's that doesn't, it's just getting your values and getting them straight. And I think a lot of it, and that's why I like the Daring Greatly stuff, she talks about what we're sort of taught and the boxes that we're put in. So sort of girls are just sort of put in this box of, this is what's expected.
I talk about that a lot.
And that was what was holding me back a lot. And so that's why that book particularly resonated with me. And it was like, I understand. I get it. I understand why I've sort of felt like that or feel like that. And, it's like, I have had those things said. I've said those things myself. And
because we hear it, don't we? And we take it on board. And I've often asked myself, do I really believe that? Is that true for me? Or have I borrowed that? And that's where I know the difference between, if I've borrowed it, I'm just not feeling it. Whereas if I truly believe that is true for me, then I feel very, very different. And values, you touched on that, is massive. I think that's a huge, where we don't understand or would even know what other people's values are if they're not telling us. So sharing your values and what's important to you is massive in contributing to a fulfilling relationship. Spending time together, you've touched on. Actively listening, being interested.
That's one of my favorite ones.
Being interested in somebody and actively listening is massive, isn't it?
Yeah, so it just tickles me. We said active listening. It's it's one of my favorite sort of quotes, and it's also something that Mark, my husband, hates, because I've thrown it out so many times, purely because I would do it. I wasn't aware of the phrase. I understood it, but I wasn't aware of the actual phrase for it. And I was having to do online member success training so that the region would get access to BNIU. And quite by chance, I did the module on active listening. And in the morning, my dog trainer would come round, because I've got a stupid big dog called Bruce. He's ridiculously big and really struggled to walk him. And because he bangs my elbow, I've got tennis elbow a few times, so struggled to walk him because he's a big brute. And she'd come round to give us a few hints. And I'd seen her in the morning, and then she emailed me a report, and I was going to go through that report with Mark. And I got in, and I just finished off the member success. And I said, oh, do you want to go through the report from Claire? Yes. Okay. So it says, right, first of all, okay, he needs to have 2 short walks. He needs to have an hour's walk a day, but over 2 short walks. And instantly he went into, oh, well, I'm just going to have to get up and walk him more. And you're not going to do it, you dodgy elbows. And it went on like this for a few minutes. I'm like, are you done? Are you done? And straight, went on for a bit, and then eventually went, okay, and point 2 is a recommended harness, so even me with my dodgy elbows can walk in. It was like, oh. And I drive him nuts, because I use this example as an example of not active listening all the time. I'm not like, I feel my ears burning, you've been using me as an example again, and I'm like, sorry Mark, but you just keep giving me so much material.
Great content. But listening to respond rather than actively listening. And
I must admit, I've got to be honest, I still don't walk.
Brilliant. Did you not get the harness then, or is it just he's taking it on board?
Yeah, we did get the harness. He just uses it.
You know why? Because it means it validates his story now of.
Isn't it? But it was hilarious, because he just literally reacted immediately without waiting and discussing it. And I use that example quite often, because so many people can resonate with it. And it's that, when you're having that conversation or that argument with your other half, and you have your response built before they've even finished what they're saying. And I said, and if you've built that response and you're wording it in your head, you are not actively listening. You've stopped listening. You've actually started doing it, and you're missing the point.
And equally, what you did was brilliant, in the fact that you didn't react yourself. You just, what I call, held the space for him, because you could have easily have been very triggered by that, and it could have, with more fireworks could have gone off. And I think that's the thing about the quote behind you there is, I think we build the capacity and the knowledge and the wisdom and the know-how, how to hold the space for somebody else when we have once been in the arena ourselves. And it's like, I might not know what to suggest, but I'm here. And sometimes just that space to make it okay, to feel safe is all we need, isn't it? I've got one last question for you, right? And it's the one I ask everybody. And I know I haven't prepped you for this at all, because I like an immediate response or the honest, open response that comes first. But, with the work that you do in the world, and I know mental health and communication is really key for you, how do you see the work you do in the world and fulfilling relationships making a positive impact on the world around us? If we were to have those fulfilling relationships, how would our world look?
I think it'll be a lot happier. I genuinely feel that it would be a lot happier. We can't get through things on our own. We are a sociable I'm trying to think of the word, like mammals we are sociable. We need people around us, and we need to be open to that. And I think the more open we are to it, and listening and empathizing and not making it all about us is really important. And I think when you have that mindset of everything is all about us, and you can hear it when I listen to different speakers and presenters, and I hear me, I was great at this, I did that. And I remember hearing a speaker at one of our national conferences, and it completely switched me off, because it was just immediate. I wanted to write a book. I wanted to do this, I wanted to do that, and now look at me, I'm amazing, I've written this book, I've done this, I've done that. And it was like, okay, you're not even remotely engaging or reading your audience at all. It was just so insular. He was just it was just self-promotion.
Yeah.
And that's what I don't like, is that huge self-promotion and the big ego. And I think you need to leave your ego at the door, because it clouds everything.
Yeah.
And that's one of the ownership things that it's brought up, is do not let your ego get in the way of owning something.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
often that, so ego's got no place for me. I'm not interested. It's about keeping it real, being who you are, and listening and supporting each other.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
I hope
Because
that
in those it answered it beautifully, because what I
right?
heard, I loved it. No, it's not it is what it is for you. And then because that's what I love about these conversations, about what really matters, is my synopsis of our whole conversation and what you just said is that fulfilling relationships are what build connection and community, because we all are walking each other home. We all are in it together. And I just love that. Well, the word I've circled on my page here, on the copious notes that I've taken, is just example. So thank you from me to you for being an example of what you truly believe in, what you're passionate about, and what you are here to help others with in the world. And it sounds like you've really made it your life's purpose. So for being that example, as Marianne Williamson says, you liberate others and you give them permission to do the same. So it's been, and I'm getting tingles now, we have to have more conversations.
Yes,
I've
definitely.
just loved spending this time with you. Thank you so much. And Vanessa really does love Louise Eccles-Cookson. She's an absolute gem and is an angel, as our friend Neil would say. So thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Yes,
God bless you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.